The drama begins in a school where we see Dano, a rich, self-admiring girl. We are then shown Dano's strange thoughts, such as how beautiful she is and how handsome boys being attracted to her is her destiny, like a drama's female protagonist. The scene shifts to the school lobby where Dano is talking with her friend. Then A3 enters, the school's most popular, rich, and handsome boy group, Namjo, Dohwa, and Baek. All the girls scream upon seeing them, as the girls are big fans of A3. Now, from the other side, a girl named Judah enters, stumbling while carrying heavy boxes. She falls onto Namjo, the leader of A3, and accidentally kisses his cheek. Namjo scolds her, "You ruined my uniform and my face." Dano comes and stands up for Judah, making her feel comfortable. Then she taps Namjo's shoulder and moves on. Then she feels slightly strange, and when she looks back, all the children were frozen in place. Seeing this, Dano becomes very confused, but before she can react, as she closes and opens her eyes, she finds herself in the classroom. There, her friends tell her, "It's the midterm exam today, and you prepared very well." But she doesn't understand when she prepared. When she picks up her notebook, she sees her highlighted notes, but she doesn't understand when she wrote them. Then her gaze falls on the board, where the first midterm exam information is written. She feels weird again, and hears a page turning sound. As she closes and opens her eyes again, she finds herself in the fourth term of the midterm exam, the day of their final exam. Now, what was happening to Dano? She couldn't understand anything. In the next scene, we see Dano at the doctor's, where she is telling him her problems. "I hear strange sounds and I teleport from one time frame to another." Here we learn that Dano has had a heart problem since childhood, and her heart is weak. Because of this, she had heart surgery some time ago. Therefore, she felt that this problem was due to her heart surgery or her new medicines. But the doctor tells her, "This is happening due to stress and overwork. You should rest a little and stay away from comic books." After this, we see Bae-kyung in a car with his father, where he is scolding him for not taking Dano to the hospital, because their agenda was to expand their business through Dano's father. The scene now shifts back to Dano, where she again hears weird sounds, and suddenly her behavior changes drastically. She greets Bae-kyung in a very sweet voice. Bae-kyung asks her about her hospital visit, to which she replies very sweetly. But Bae-kyung rudely says, "Because of you, my life has become messed up." Here we learn that they are engaged, but Bae-kyung is not at all happy with this relationship because he likes quiet and innocent girls. But Dano is very talkative and very bubbly. Again, with the sound of a page turning, Dano's behavior changes completely, and she starts to insult Bae-kyung, which seems strange to us. And with this page-turning sound, Dano experiences many changes even in her feelings. Sometimes she is talking to her friend, sometimes she is making a project, sometimes she is in the cafeteria, or sometimes she's on the road. And all these shifts are completely random, sometimes after hours or sometimes after a day. In the next scene, we see a mysterious boy, but his face is not shown, but he has a cut mark on his hand. Then we see Dano coming to the library. To learn about her problems, she goes to the library and reads many books, but to no avail. Then, a book catches her attention, whose name is Secret, and as she touches the book, she begins to see visuals, like Namjo holding her hand and Curry falling on her in the cafeteria. But she is shocked at that moment. But she gets shocked then when Bae-kyung grabs her hand and asks, "Why are you following me?" And the same thing was happening to him that she had just seen in her vision a short while ago. Seeing this, she runs away from there. The next scene introduces another main character, Jin Mi-cha, but the students know him as Dry Squid Fairy, and the girls also like him very much because of his good looks. While serving food in the cafeteria, Jin Mi-cha sees Dano's face and asks, "What happened to you?" Then Dano tells him, "Maybe I'm losing my memory?" Hearing this, Jin Mi-cha gives her a strange look. Now, because Dano had seen in her vision that Curry was going to fall on her and Judah, she tries her best to save herself and Judah. But in the end, the Curry falls just as she saw in her vision. Then everyone there starts making fun of them and recording their video. But Namjo comes there and breaks a child's phone and helps Dano. In the next scene, Dano is in the classroom. Then, thinking about the past events, she comes to the conclusion that she can see the future. While talking to herself, she suddenly stands up in the middle of class, and to avoid embarrassment, she pretends to go to the nurse's office. But as soon as she goes out, she tries again to see the future, but nothing happens. Seeing her strange actions, the teacher thinks that she really needs a doctor. This scene is very funny. Then the teacher sends Bae-kyung to take her to the nurse's office, saying he is her fiancé. Going outside, Bae-kyung gets angry at Dano. Then Dano takes a step to reply to him, but she freezes there. After this, we see Dano on the terrace where she is thinking about why she couldn't reply. Suddenly, a black hole-like thing appears in front of her, which only she can see. Seeing it, she gets very scared. Then her gaze falls on Jin Mi-cha standing below, who is also looking at the same black hole-like thing. As soon as Dano sees him, he disappears from there. Now Dano goes to the cafeteria and asks Jin Mi-cha, but he denies seeing anything like that. But Dano understands that he is hiding something. Then, she sees the same secret book near him that she had seen earlier in the library. After going back to the library, she sees the same black hole and puts her hand inside it. But the hole starts pulling her inside. Dano somehow stops herself. Now she goes back to Jin Mi-cha and asks him to tell the truth. Then the biggest suspense of this series is revealed. Jin Mi-cha says, "Dano, everyone with you, they are all characters from a comic book, and we all live in a comic book world." Hearing all this, it is very difficult for Dano to believe it. But Jin Mi-cha tells her, "It's all true, and you are a comic character, and all the time travel you have done is a part of this story." Hearing all this, Dano becomes very disturbed. She thinks, how can this be? But by analyzing the situations around her, she concludes that she is the female protagonist of this book because she belongs to a rich family. She was born with a heart problem, but she is still alive. And most importantly, she is the most confident and graceful girl in school, which proves that she is the female lead. Now with all these thoughts, she goes to school, where she wonders who the male lead is if she is the female lead. Then she feels that the male lead will be one of A3. But she feels bad when all the boys of A3 ignore her and leave. Dano becomes sad, so because of her weak heart, she faints there. When she regains consciousness, she sees Bae-kyung in front of her and thinks, this is the male protagonist. But he asks about her health and leaves. In the next scene, we see Dano sitting on a school bench. But then the sound of a page turning comes, and the scene changes. Now we see that some girls are harassing Judah. Dano thinks that the male lead will come to save her, and Namju enters. Dano thinks that Namju came for her, but when he comes there and says, "Judah is my girl and no one will touch her," then, through flashbacks, Dano realizes that Namju's behavior was actually for Judah, who was with him in every scene. This finally makes Dano understand that the main leads are Namju and Judah. On the other hand, we see the mysterious student who has a mark on his hand. In the next scene, Dano and her friend are reading the characters of the secret book. Then she sees that Namju, Judah, and Do-hwa are the main characters. Her friend Seimi and the other bully girls and boys are the secondary characters. But poor Dano is just an extra character whose job is only to bring Namju and Judah closer. Seeing all this, she starts scolding the writer and says, "I don't want to be an extra character." Then she finds herself in an art room. The teacher calls her to be a painting model. The teacher explains the artwork task to everyone, in which everyone sees Namju's sketch, which he made after seeing Judah. But when Dano sees that no one is paying attention to her, she starts giving weird poses. But still, no one even looks at her. In frustration, she accidentally breaks a statue. Everyone looks at her in shock. Then, in anger, she breaks another statue. And as soon as she does this, time changes. Everything goes back to normal. In the next scene, Dano sees that all the tables and chairs are flying in the air. Jin Mi-cha is reading the same secret book. Dano asks him about all these things. Therefore, Jin Mi-cha explains it to her through a model that looks like her school. He explains, whatever happens, it happens in the stage period as the writer wants. And when we are in the stage period, we cannot go against the writer. But when you behave according to your own will, it is the shadow period. In that period, no matter what you do, it has no effect. Because when the next stage period comes, things will be as the writer has written. And whatever happens in the shadow period, it is only remembered by those characters who are self-aware, like me and you. This happens because ego has developed in these characters, and this is the reason for their self-awareness. Now Dano decides, I will change my fate and will not follow the writer. In the next scene, during music class, she happily dances. But the scene changes again, and she understands that she's on stage. Therefore, she couldn't do anything. But in the stage period, she could only speak the lines written by the writer in the comic, which makes her very angry, because the writer had shown her as if she were madly in love with Bae-kyung. Therefore, she decides, no matter what, I will change my fate. In the next scene, when Dano is near her locker, she has a vision that she fell down the stairs, and her leg was fractured. Seeing this, she gets quite scared, but she remembers something Jin Mi-cha said. She remembers that she cannot make any changes, so she becomes a little sad. Then, when Dano is in the library, she notices that the second male lead has entered, and it's Do-hwa. While leaving the library, she was carrying many books, which made her unable to see anything, and some books fall down. Then a boy picks them up and puts them back, but Dano can't see his face. But she sees that the boy has a mark on his hand. In the next scene, the same mysterious boy passes by Dano, and she starts following him, but her feet freeze. Then, Judah is coming from the front, and Sei-mi pushes her. As soon as Dano turns to save her, she starts falling down the stairs and thinks, Jinmi-cha was right that I cannot make any changes in the story. But her fall stops because she falls on the back of the mysterious boy. The mysterious boy quickly catches her, and both of them fall down together. Dano wanted to see the face of her rescuer, but before that, she faints there. Her eyes open in the nurse's office, where nothing happened as she saw in her vision. She only had a small injury on her knee. Seeing this, she is surprised. She asks Sei-mi what happened there, from which she learns that Baekhyung brought her here. But no one saw the face of the rescuer. Going outside, Dano meets Do-hwa, who was watching Judah from outside the room. Dano tells him, go inside and talk to her, and don't worry, she's perfectly fine. Then Dano starts thinking after looking at Do-hwa's bag. She hits his back with her back, but she doesn't feel anything like she did with the mysterious boy. Her heartbeat remains perfectly normal, from which she understands that Do-hwa is not the mysterious boy. Then she hits the backs of all the male students in the school, hoping to meet the mysterious boy. But nothing like that happens. Then she decides, I will give the mysterious boy a chance to come to me. Therefore, she participates in dodgeball so that someone will hit her and the mysterious boy will come to save her. And indeed, that happens. The boy saves her. Then Dano notices the cut mark on his hand, and as soon as she turns towards him, the scene changes. Then she finds herself in the nurse's office where she is unable to get up. Then she realizes that she is on stage, and she won't be able to get up until this scene ends. In the next scene, Dano remembers that she saw the same mark on a boy's hand in the library. Therefore, she goes to the library to find him. From there, she sees from the window that the boy is sitting outside in the garden. As she goes outside to see him, he is not there. Then she sees the same umbrella hanging on a tree and tries to pick it up. Then, the mysterious boy comes there and helps her. Seeing him, Dano comes behind him and opens her umbrella. Finally, along with Dano, we too are able to see the face of the mysterious boy. But before she can say anything to him, she teleports to the hospital because of her stage period. Do-hwa comes to meet her there, who asks her, are you sick again? In reply, she says, I don't know if I'm sick or not, but what's happening to me is what the writer wants. Do-hwa doesn't understand her words at all. As soon as the stage period ends, Dano starts going back inside the hospital. Then Do-hwa says, you've been acting very strangely for a few days, and touching every boy's back in school wasn't cute at all. Hearing this, Dano is shocked, because these were the shadow period activities, which no character remembers until they have self-realization. Hearing this, she asks Do-hwa, do you remember all these things? To which Do-hwa replies, yes. Dano takes him to a corner of the hospital, where she hits his nose a little hard. This causes Do-hwa to start bleeding from his nose. At this action of hers, Do-hwa says, have you gone crazy? Dano questions him, do you also feel like you teleport from one time frame to another? To which Do-hwa says, yes. Then Dano tells him, now you are self-aware. We are characters in a comic book. Do-hwa doesn't believe this at all. Dano leaves saying, everything will become normal as soon as the stage period arrives. In the next scene, Do-hwa meets his older brother, who was also Dano's doctor. He realizes that his nosebleed has stopped, and the bag he left in the garden had automatically come into his hand. Seeing this, Do-hwa also starts believing Dano's words. In the next scene, we see Dano in the school lobby and thinks, when I meet the mysterious boy again, what will I say to him? Then the boy suddenly appears in front of her, but he doesn't say anything. Dano notices that there is no name written on his name tag. She asks him, do you recognize me? But he doesn't answer. He just stares at her strangely. In the next scene, Dano checks the class records, but there is no name of that boy in it. Instead, only a number is written, 13. Seeing this, Dano feels even worse for the boy than for herself, because far from his importance, his name doesn't even exist in this world. Then the scene shifts and a soccer match is shown, where all the girls are cheering only for Ranju. But Dano's attention was only on number 13. There she asks Judah, have you ever seen number 13 before? To which she replies, no. In the next scene, we see Jinmi-cha and Dano together in the kitchen. Then Do-hwa comes there, where Dano shows him the secret book and says, at first, I also thought that I am the main character. But actually, both of us are just side characters who have no significant role. But if you look from your perspective, we would be the main leads of this comic book, and I will change my fate. Before she can say anything else, she teleports to the doctor's office, where her father is also present. There, the doctor asks her about her condition, but before she can say anything, she starts to have chest pain. Then the doctor sends the nurse out with her and tells her father she won't live much longer. Dano also hears this, hearing which she becomes very upset and thinks, no matter what, I will change my fate because I don't want to die yet. Then she says, I have to check if number 13 will really help me change my fate. When she reaches the stairs downstairs, she sees number 13 going upstairs and runs after him and starts falling. Then, number 13 catches her hand and saves her, and he looks at his hands as if he had touched someone for the first time. Then Dano tells him, "Let's go to the science lab," and number 13 starts following her without saying anything. As soon as they reach the lab, Dano remembers a vision she had seen a while ago and tells number 13, "I want to see if you can change my fate." She explains to him, "In a while, I will bring ice boxes inside the lab, and they will fall on me, but you have to save me from falling." Hearing this, number 13 doesn't answer anything. He just starts looking at her. In the next scene, Dano reaches the stage period where Judah is carrying ice boxes. Dano helps her. As soon as Dano reaches the class, Namju's phone falls down. He tells Dano, "Pick it up," but Judah herself says to pick it up, which starts an argument between them. Seeing this, Dano points towards number 13, and as Namju starts coming towards them, both of them collide with the ice boxes. Number 13 saves the boxes on Dano's side from falling, but Namju and Judah fall together. Dano notices that she and number 13 have made a change within the story. In the next scene, Dano's father talks about taking her on a world tour. In response, Dano says, "When I was in the hospital, I missed school a lot, so now I don't want to miss my school." Then she asks her dad for permission to go on a school camp, which her dad grants her. But Dano thinks, will the scriptwriter let me go there or not? Going to school, Dano finds out that this time the trip is within Korea, and this location has been chosen by Namju himself. Not only that, Namju is also bearing the entire cost of this trip, so that Judah can also go there. After which Dano and Judah go to Jin Micha, where she was talking to him. Then her gaze falls on number 13 sitting outside the window, but Jin Micha is not happy at all seeing him. There we see that number 13 has an injury on his hand, so he goes to a room to find first aid, where Dano helps him and climbs on a stool to get the bandage box. But she was about to fall from the stool, but number 13 saves her, and a very good moment is created between them here. Then Dano puts a bandage on his injury, and number 13 also puts a bandage on Dano's injury because she fell while running after him. Now it goes on like this for a few days, and whenever Dano meets number 13, she keeps reminding him about herself so that he can remember her and help her change her fate. Then on the trip, everyone is in the bus. Then Namju offers Judah food, but she refuses to take it, but Dano says, "I'll share with Judah." Namju understands that she is helping him. Then Dano also understands, "I've come on this trip only to bring them together." Reaching the beach, Dano sees a vision where she was going into the water. Seeing this, she thinks, "If I go into the water, number 13 will come to save me." Now, as soon as the stage period begins, Baekhyun comes there and breaks Dano's love stone and throws it into the water in anger because he didn't love her and was doing all this only for formality. Now Dano, crying, goes into the water to look for the stone. The writer had made Dano's stage character completely opposite to her real character, where everyone was watching her, but no one did anything. Dano understands people cannot change anything against the writer. Now she cuts her wish from the stone, in which she had written Baekhyun's name, and changes it to "I want to live." Then she starts making a tower of it so that her wish can be fulfilled. But no matter how many times she tries, the tower falls. This makes her very sad. Then number 13 comes there to help her, but Dano says, "There's no use. No matter how many times you try, this stone will fall." Saying this, she starts to leave, but as soon as number 13 places the stone, this time it doesn't fall, and we hear him speak for the first time, where he calls out Dano's name. After this, Dano sees another vision. Now everyone goes for hiking according to their pairs, where while walking, Dano starts to have pain in her hand, and she sits there. Then Baekhyun says the same lines to her that she saw in her vision, and he leaves Dano there. Everything happens exactly as she saw in her vision, but in the midst of all this, even after remembering the map, she really gets lost in the forest, and her torch battery also runs out. So she sits in one place and starts singing a song because she was very scared. Then she hears someone coming, and she thinks it will be Baekhyun, who will have come to save her, according to her vision. But instead of Baekhyun, there is number 13, which surprises Dano. Then number 13 takes her to a very nice place, where there is also a waterfall, and both of them sit there. Then both of them are feeling cold, and Dano says, "In this scene, you should take off your shirt and give it to me." Then he starts giving her his shirt, as well as his t-shirt, but Dano stops him from doing so. Then he takes off his shirt and gives it to her, and here both of them spend a very good time, where Dano names number 13 Haru. The next morning, Baekhyun comes to Dano and asks her, "Where were you? I was very worried about you." Hearing this, Dano is very shocked because this was not a stage scene, and she leaves without saying anything. Now Dano goes to Haru again and introduces herself to him because she felt that he might have forgotten about her. Then she sees his sketchbook and praises his drawing. Then both of them go treasure hunting, where they find a box containing a wooden charm. As soon as Haru touches it, he feels a lot of pain in his hand injury. In the next next scene, Do-hwa meets Dano, where Dano tells him, I am making small changes so that I can bring a change in my life. To this, Do-hwa says, but I only see Judah always leaving. Then, Dano sees Judah, and she suggests to Do-hwa, go and talk to her. Further, Dano meets Jin-micha and tells him, I named number 13 Haru. Hearing this, he tells her, extra characters get their names and start doing whatever they want, and doing so can be very wrong. But Dano doesn't take this seriously. On the other hand, we see Haru, who is drawing a sketch of Dano in the art room. Meanwhile, Jin-micha sees many paintings of Dano in the library. While following them, he reaches a corner of the library where many paintings of Dano are hung. Seeing this, he's very shocked because all these paintings were drawn by Haru. In the next scene, we see Haru, who goes to Bae-kyung and asks, do you have that keychain that Dano gifted you? But Bae-kyung refuses, saying, I threw it away. Now here, Bae-kyung asks him his name, then Haru tells him his name. In the classroom, we see that Dano is only looking at Haru through the book. Then we see Dano and Haru in the library, where Dano is also only looking at him. As soon as Haru looks at her, she reacts as if she's not even looking at him. Haru sits down next to her and says, I came here because of the sunlight. Then he starts making shadows with his hand. And seeing this, Dano does the same. The shine of her bangle is shining on Haru's eyes, and seeing this, both of them start laughing. They both look very innocent, but Bae-kyung feels very jealous seeing this and moves towards them. Then Dano hears the sound of a page turning, and Bae-kyung comes there, lifts Haru, and pushes him onto the shelf, causing Haru to start bleeding from his head. Seeing this, Dano faints there. When she opens her eyes, she is in the hospital, where the doctor is hesitant to tell her reports. Then Dano says to the doctor, I know I don't have much time. Then she very innocently says, I will change my story and save my life. When she goes home, many things have changed, which reminds her of Jin-micha's words. It will be very bad for an extra character to get a name and act independently. When she goes to school, Haru doesn't even look at her. Then Dano goes to Jin-micha and says, I am very bad. I will not meet Haru anymore and will not talk to him because this problem happened because of me. Here, Jin-micha doesn't reply to anything after listening to all her words, after which Dano puts some medicine on Haru's table in the classroom, but he doesn't even touch it. In the next scene, Bae-kyung was very angry at Dano because his dad had scolded him because of Dano. Dano doesn't reply anything. Then, it starts raining there, and Haru comes and punches Bae-kyung hard, knocking him down and starts taking Dano away from there. Seeing this, Bae-kyung asks him, who are you? To which Haru says, there's no use in me telling you, because as soon as the stage changes, you will forget everything. Then, we are shown a scene from the past, where we are shown the beginning of Haru, where he was wandering around the school thinking, who am I? And he also notices a cut mark on his palm. Then he finds the same secret title comic in the library bookshelf, and when he goes out, he also sees the black hole-like thing, and he sees that no one except him and Dano can see that thing. Going to the classroom, he calls out Dano's name, and for the first time he hears his own voice. Then Dano hears his voice, but she doesn't see anyone. And Haru looks at his name tag and thinks, I don't even know my own name. Then how do I remember Dano's name? Now in the present, Dano asks Haru, do you remember me? In response, Haru says, I don't know, but for some reason I keep looking at you. In the next scene, Do-hwa meets Jin-micha and asks about the rules of the comic world and says, whatever I talk to Judah in shadow time, I don't remember anything as soon as the stage period starts. To which Jin-micha explains to him, it's all the writer's will, and if the writer wants, you and Judah can never be together. Now the scene shifts to Dano, where she is standing on the terrace and is very happy. Then, Bae-kyung arrives there. Then their stage period begins, where Bae-kyung has brought a new heart monitor watch for Dano because he had broken her old watch. But Dano refuses to take the watch and says, we don't have any relationship anymore because I am breaking our engagement, and I promise that because of my decision, your father will not have any problem in business. Saying all this, she is very happy because for the first time the writer had written her favorite lines for her, which she always wanted to say to Bae-kyung. Now as soon as the stage ends, she starts leaving, but Bae-kyung stops her and says, take back everything you just said. But Dano leaves from there. After reading the comic, Do-hwa also understands that Dano doesn't have much time left. Therefore, he asks Jin-micha for a solution, but his answer remains the same. No one can change the writer's script. In the next scene, we see Do-hwa and Dano, where Do-hwa has brought strawberry milk for her, and he starts crying seeing her, thinking that Dano is going to die soon. But Dano promises him, no matter what, I will change my story, even if I am an extra character. Meanwhile, Bae-kyung was very angry because of Dano breaking off their engagement, and he even fights with a girl in the school lobby. He was even about to hit his hand on the glass, but Haru stops him, and when he asks him, "What do you mean by all this? Why are you stopping me?" To which Haru says, "Because I feel very bad for you." Further, we again see Haru and Dano together, where Haru asks Dano, "What do you remember?" Dano avoids this question. Then Dano's friend Sei-mi and another friend of hers arrive, and Sei-mi is very impressed seeing Haru's good looks. Then Dano takes Haru to the canteen, where poor Haru can't get anything because there was a huge crowd. So Dano herself pushes her way through the crowd and brings a sandwich for him. Now when he was eating the sandwich, some cheese got on his lips, which Dano cleans. And at this point, Haru feels something different. Then Do-hwa comes there and joins them and says, "Meeting Haru, I understand why Dano likes his back so much because he is different." But Dano stops him from speaking further, to which Do-hwa says, "It's okay, I'll forget everything as soon as the stage starts." But Dano tells Haru, Do-hwa is the second male lead in the story of Do-hwa, Namju, and Judah. This makes Do-hwa also understand that Haru has also achieved self-realization. In the next scene, we see the three of them together in the kitchen, where they were explaining the stage and shadow period to Haru. And there, as soon as he touches the model's puppet, he starts feeling pain in his injured hand. Then Jin Miche comes inside and says, "You shouldn't touch what's not yours." Now as soon as everyone leaves, we see another new book in Jin Miche's hand. Then he goes to check in the library, but the secret book is not in its place. He meets Haru in the hallway and he says, "If you try to change the story, your hand will hurt even more, and your only job is to stop Dano from changing the story. And this is also your destiny, so don't try to go against the writer at all." In the next scene, the classroom shows all the children talking about Namju's lavish birthday party, where Dano has a vision again. In it, Namju gifts Judah shoes and officially announces Judah as his girlfriend in front of everyone at his birthday party, which makes her quite worried for Do-hwa. Then she calls Haru and Do-hwa for this discussion and says, "We will change this vision together." Saying this, both of them look at Haru with great hope, because only he could help them change all this. But he refuses them and leaves because Jin Miche had warned him not to do so. Therefore, Dano starts persuading him even inside the classroom so that he can go to the party and help them change the story. Then Bae-kyung comes to the classroom and starts taking Dano away by holding her hand, but on her refusal, he starts twisting her hand, causing Dano to cry in pain. Then Haru intervenes and separates them and tells Bae-kyung, "Stay away from Dano, because she doesn't want to talk to you." And he tells Dano, "I will definitely go to the party to help you." This makes Bae-kyung very angry. Further, we see Do-hwa explaining to Bae-kyung, "You should treat Dano well because she is really very sick." But unaffected by his words, Bae-kyung leaves. In the next scene, we see Do-hwa, Dano, and Haru outside Namju's birthday party, where the three of them were talking. "No matter what, the three of us will change this story, no matter how small the change is." But then the sound of a page turning comes, and the stage period begins. We see Dano going to the party with Bae-kyung, because according to the writer, she has come here with him. But Haru cannot enter the party because he does not have an invitation card. And as soon as the stage period ends, Dano starts looking for Haru here and there, but she cannot find him anywhere because he couldn't enter. But Haru somehow enters the party wearing a waiter's dress. Namju and Judah's stage scene was exactly as Dano saw in her vision, where Namju gifts Judah very expensive shoes and puts them on her feet. Further, we see that Haru somehow enters Namju's room, seeing which Do-hwa is shocked. And Bae-kyung starts asking him, "How do you know this?" Meanwhile, Haru spills wine on Namju's shirt, and before he can react, Haru tells Do-hwa to go to Judah. Now Do-hwa runs and takes Judah out of the party, where he confesses to her, "I like you." But on the other hand, Judah's stage scene is exchanged with Dano, because now both of them were not able to control what was happening, and Haru also understands this. There, Bae-kyung officially announces in front of everyone, "Dano is my girlfriend." And on hearing this, Dano smiles because she was in the stage period. But suddenly, the injury mark on Haru's hand starts to hurt, causing the drink glass to fall from his hand, and he leaves. Now, as soon as the stage period ends, Dano starts going to Haru, but Bae-kyung stops her. Then she asks him for his feelings, to which Bae-kyung says, "Not me, but you are doing it yourself." To which Dano says, "I never loved you. I was just acting what the writer wrote." Saying this, she leaves. On the other hand, Judah says to Do-hwa, "I also like you, but only as a friend." To which Do-hwa says, "I know, but I will remember this conversation." Now, as soon as Namju comes there, the stage period starts, and he says to Judah, "There is no need to go to the party anymore because the party is over." Hearing this, Judah goes behind him, but she falls. And meanwhile, she doesn't look at Do-hwa even once because she was in her character. Meanwhile, Haru was in intense pain in his hand, and remembers Jin Mi-chae's words, "If you try to change the story, the pain in your hand will increase." Then Dano comes to him, who doesn't notice the pain in his hand because she was very excited. "I changed the story." But Haru was very scared by this. That night, Haru meets Jin Mi-chae and says, "I had a lot of pain in my hand in exchange for changing the story, but I did all this for Dano." To which Jin Mi-chae asks him, "Why?" In response, he says, "Only Dano knows my name, and only by her noticing me did I get existence." Then both of them look at the picture of those flowers and say, "Looking at these, it seems like I don't know them, and I have some old connection with these things. Maybe Dano has the answer to my questions." To which Jin Mi-chae says, "She doesn't know anything, she's just an extra character, and if an extra character creates a problem, the writer will remove him, and you will be the first because Dano is more important than you." The next day, Haru ignores Dano in class. Then some fangirls of Baekhyun come and start harassing Dano, causing pain in her heart. Therefore, Haru comes there and stops those girls from doing so. Baekhyun comes and starts taking Dano to the nurse's office, seeing which Haru remembers that Baekhyun had said to him on the ground, "I'm just playing with Dano's feelings, because Dano can even die for me." Remembering this, Haru stops Baekhyun and takes Dano out of the class himself and asks about her health, putting his hand on her forehead. Because of this, Dano's heart starts beating even faster, and she moves away from him. This is a very sweet moment between the two. Then she goes to the terrace to get fresh air and looks at her and Haru's picture. Then Haru comes there and asks her, "Can I keep this picture with me?" To which Dano agrees. She asks him, "Why were you ignoring me?" To which Haru says, "I was thinking about something, but now I have decided that no matter what, I will help you change your story." In the next scene, Haru goes to Jin Mi-chae, where Jin Mi-chae assumes that he is afraid of disappearing. But the opposite happens, where Haru tells him, "No matter what, I will help Dano change her story, and nothing is more important to me than Dano. Now both of us will find answers to our questions together." Saying this, he leaves. Jin Mi-chae keeps his words in front of him and looks at a comic trumpet creeper, in which Haru is a main character. In the next scene, Haru's popularity increases the most, due to which all the children gather around him. We notice that Haru's name is now visible on his name tag. In music class 2, he plays the flute very well, which impresses the teacher a lot. In art class 2, the teacher praises him a lot, and Sei-mi calls Haru by his name for the first time. Hearing this, both Dano and Haru are shocked. Then Dano notices that Haru's name is becoming visible on his name tag. Then when she gets close to him in excitement to read his nameplate in the garden, Haru feels a little nervous. In the next scene, Dano sees a vision that Baekhyun asks her for a movie date and she agrees. Now she tells all this to Do-hwa and Haru. Then Do-hwa tells her, "If Baekhyun is approaching you, you should accept his feelings." But on Haru glaring at her, Do-hwa says, but she shouldn't accept his feelings so easily. Then Dano goes to Jin Mi-chae with a gift and apologizes for her rude behavior. Then she tells him, Haru's name is being displayed on his name tag. Hearing this, Jin Mi-chae is shocked. He checks the list of comic book characters, where there were no changes. But Dano tells him, this happened in the stage scene. Saying this, she leaves. As she was going home after school, the stage period begins, where Baekhyun stops her and asks, "Will you go to see a movie?" And because she is in the stage period, she smiles and agrees. Now, as soon as the stage period ends, she tells Baekhyun, "I was doing this only because the writer wrote it," and asking him to meet in the evening. She goes to Haru. Meanwhile, Baekhyun's father was very happy with his approach towards Dano, and he gives him all the cash from his wallet so that he can impress both of them. In the car, Baekhyun tells his father, "I don't think I'll marry Dano." Hearing this, his father gets very angry and throws him out of the car. So Baekhyun calls Dano and says, "I won't be able to come, so don't wait for me." Hearing this, she starts crying, but then the stage scene ends and she becomes completely normal. But before she leaves the theater, Haru arrives there. Seeing him, both are very shocked. Now both of them complete this movie date together, and here we get to see very cute moments between them. Now, as soon as Baekhyun completes his stage period, he comes running to the theater, where he gets angry at Dano for not waiting for him. To which Dano says, "This doesn't matter." Hearing this, Baekhyun shouts, "This doesn't matter because Dano is my fiancé." To which Haru stops him from shouting and says, "Dano will be your fiancé, but she is also my friend." Saying this, he takes Dano away from there. In the next scene, we see both of them near the swimming pool. Then the stage period begins, and Baekhyun comes and asks, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't even swim because of your heart." To which he says, "I just came here to see you." But as soon as the stage period ends, Dano goes to Haru, seeing which Baekhyun gets very angry. In the stage period, we see a swimming competition between Do-hwa and Namju. But in the meantime, a siren sounds, causing all the students to run away. Dano notices that Haru's name has been removed from his name tag, but in the meantime she falls into the water in the hustle and bustle. In the next scene, we see Dano in the hospital, where Bae-kyung is also with her. Seeing Dano, he remembers his mom and says, "Why do all people leave me?" Now as soon as Dano gets up, she runs to school, where she finds out that Haru's existence has completely ended from the school, and no one remembers him. Actually, what Jin Mi-chae had said had come true. If an extra character becomes independent, something very terrible will happen. To find out what happened to Haru, Dano goes to the library to look for the secret book, where we see that the book is with Bae-kyung. Then we see Bae-kyung, who tears up Haru's sketchbook and throws it into the swimming pool. In the present, when Dano sees the secret title book in Bae-kyung's hand in the library, she understands that Bae-kyung is also now self-aware, but there is no change in his rude behavior. And Dano takes the book and leaves. In the next scene, we see Dano, Do-hwa, and Jin Mi-chae together, where Jin Mi-chae tells her about Haru's disappearance. Hearing this, Dano becomes even more upset because she thinks it's all her fault. Then she goes to find Haru in the hallway, which Jin Mi-chae also stops, but she says, "Now only I can find Haru." Now it's evening, but she doesn't find him anywhere, and both of them sit in the football ground and start crying, which Bae-kyung sees, but he doesn't go to them. At school, Dano promises Jin Mi-chae, "I won't make any more changes to the story," to which Jin Mi-chae says, "This is the result of you changing the story, and now it is not known what will happen next." Do-hwa also realizes, "If I hadn't tried to change my story with Judah, Haru would have been with us." Then we see Dano sitting on the stairs, and she calls out to Bae-kyung there, mistaking him for Haru. Hearing this, Bae-kyung is a little disturbed, but seeing Dano's sad face, he gives her a strawberry milkshake and leaves. After this, in the music room, as soon as Dano hears a number 13, she starts crying again. So Bae-kyung takes her out and gets angry at her. But Dano just asks him, "You remember Haru, right?" Because no one remembers him. When Do-hwa finds out that Bae-kyung remembers Haru, he also understands that Bae-kyung is now self-aware, and he also has an ego. Returning from school, Dano sees that Bae-kyung is waiting for her, but she doesn't go with him. But as she moves forward, she starts having chest pain, so she has to go with him unwillingly. Now as soon as Bae-kyung drops her off at her house, he sees that she is very sad and is not eating. So he tells her, "I will keep you very happy, and I will do everything that Haru used to do, and I will also help you change the story." To which Dano says, "Only Haru can do that. Why don't you understand why I want this? I don't have many friends, and I don't have a healthy life." In response, Dano says, "I'm just an extra character, and the writer can end my life anytime, and my remaining extra time will go into helping the main characters because I am Namju's classmate and Bae-kyung's fiancé. But before all this, I am Dano, and I am very desperate to live my life." The next scene is of the school sports day, where all the children were preparing. Jin Mi-chae is complaining to the writer, "Why do I always have to stay in the kitchen?" Then Do-hwa comes there and greets him, looking very happy. Seeing this, Jin Mi-chae feels strange, and he reads the secret title book and is shocked. Then Do-hwa is also shocked after reading it. On the ground, all the children were participating in games where Namju cheers Judah from afar. Then the scene shifts to Dano, who is holding a banner with Bae-kyung's name in her hand and says, "I am very happy that I can spend time with you in this event." But as soon as the stage period ends, she throws the banner at Bae-kyung and starts leaving. But then the sound of a page turning comes, and Dano finds herself with Bae-kyung, where both of them are participating in a three-legged race. But in the middle of the race, her shoe comes off, and she falls, and her heartbeat starts increasing. Therefore, hearing the sound of her heart monitor, Bae-kyung leaves her there. Now Dano goes to pick up her shoe, but she falls again. Then a boy comes there and picks up her shoe and gives it to her. And as soon as we look towards him, he is Haru. But he goes to Bae-kyung without any expression and behaves with him as if they were very good friends. Dano gets very excited seeing him, but he doesn't recognize her. He recognizes Dano only as Bae-kyung's fiancé. Seeing him like this, both Bae-kyung and Dano are surprised. Then Do-hwa comes to tell Dano, "Jin Mi-chae and I saw in the secret comic that Haru has been introduced by the writer as an extra character." But before he could say anything else, he reaches the lobby for the stage. Hearing Haru's lines there, he thinks, now Haru also has his lines, but he doesn't recognize anyone. In the next scene, Bae-kyung and Haru are in the court for the match where Bae-kyung thinks Haru is pretending not to recognize anyone. And he says to Haru, "I will find out the truth." In the match, Haru and Dano are in different teams, where Dano tries to repeat the same things so that Haru can remember something. But it doesn't work because as soon as the stage scene comes, Haru forgets everything. Then Bae-kyung asks Haru many questions to know the truth, but from his answers he understands that Haru has not yet become self-aware and does not remember anything from his past life. Jin Mi-chae doesn't understand. How did Haru forget everything? He sees Haru sitting in the garden where Haru is looking at red flowers. Then he goes to him and says, "These mean waiting." and asks him, "Doesn't your palm hurt anymore?" But Haru doesn't understand anything, and now that mark was not on his palm either. In the next scene, we see Haru, where as soon as the sound of page turning comes, we see him in the same corner where he had made many sketches of Dano and the school. There, he also sees a mysterious black hole, and this time he also sees some people like him and Dano inside it. But those people seem to be from a different era. A girl who looks like Dano says, "I will find the answers to my questions myself." Seeing all this, Haru doesn't understand anything. Then, in the library, Haru sits down in front of Dano, but seeing this, both of them don't feel good, so he goes to the other side. He thinks, "Why, I don't know, Dano keeps revolving in my mind." Thinking this, Haru falls asleep. In his dream, he sees himself saving Dano from falling. Seeing this, he wakes up and he goes to the shelf to get a book. Then the same scene repeats there, which he saw in his dream, and he really saves Dano from falling. At that time, the sound of a page turning comes, and Dano finds herself on the hospital bed where the doctor asks her to take new medicine, but she refuses and says, "I'm already taking so many medicines." Hearing this, her dad gets angry at her. Then the doctor explains to her, "Your dad is very worried about you, so he is getting angry at you." Then Dano promises, "I will take my medicine on time if my dad fulfills my wish." And she says, "I want to get married as soon as possible." As soon as she says this, the stage period ends, and Dano tries to explain to them that she doesn't want this, but her dad hugs her. In the next scene, we are shown Haru's thought, which is from his Joseon era time, where he sees an art with red flowers and also remembers seeing Dano's ornament, where the shopkeeper tells him its meaning. "Even if this world is divided into two parts, I will still wait for you." Then Kyung starts calling him, and Haru comes out of his thoughts. There, he sees the same flower keychain on Bae Kyung's bag and asks him about it, to which he says, "Dano gave it to me." Then Haru tells him, "This flower comes in my dream," and saying this, he leaves. But hearing this, Bae Kyung's tension increases because this flower was also in Haru's sketchbook. In the next scene, Bae Kyung gives Dano expensive gifts in the park and also candies he used to give her as a child after she took medicine. Seeing these, both are very happy, and seeing Haru, Dano leaves. But again, the sound of a page turning is heard, and she finds herself with Haru. There, she was going to buy a gift for Bae Kyung with Haru, seeing which Dano thinks, "The writer is very heartless. When I wanted to be with Haru, he didn't let me, and now when I want to be away from him, he's not letting me." Outside, Haru asks Dano, "Do you like Bae Kyung very much?" To which Dano says, "I don't want to, but I have to, because this is my setup." Haru says he will change it. Then Dano tells him, "I don't want to lose you again." And after a small argument, she leaves without understanding anything. In the next scene, bully girls were teasing Dano by taking her phone. Then Haru takes that phone and returns it to Dano, but Dano gets angry and says, "Don't act like Haru," and leaves. Then Haru holds her hand and asks, "Why do you keep saying I'm not Haru? And why do I keep worrying about you?" To which Dano says, "I remember everything from the shadow period," meaning you are now self-aware, but your mind doesn't remember the time spent with me. In the next scene, Dano was standing on the road thinking that everyone follows the writer's instructions. Then she says to herself, "Will I only remain an extra role in the comic book?" Then Haru, standing behind, says, "If that happens, I will also only remain number 13. As soon as Dano hears this, she is completely shocked. She goes to Haru and sees his mark, from which she understands that he remembers everything. Then Haru apologizes for being late and hugs her, saying, "I'm not going anywhere now." It starts with a flashback, where Haru put his hand into the same black hole-like thing in the library, which resulted in the same mark on his palm that we saw on his hand at the beginning of the series. This makes Haru remember everything. In the present, Haru and Dano are sitting by the roadside talking. There, Dano considers herself the reason for Haru's disappearance, and Dano refuses to change anything further in the story. To which Haru says, "I will save your life even if I have to disappear again for it." Further, Haru tells her, "I'm leaving you home," but Dano stops him saying, "I want to stay with you until the next stage scene because I'm afraid you'll leave me again." Then Haru assures her, "I'm not going anywhere." The next day at school, Do-hwa is very happy that Haru remembers everything, and the three celebrate this happiness together. There, Do-hwa tells them Haru's memory was gone because now he is a main character in the comic book, where he also has lines to speak. Earlier, he had nothing to say, and his memories returned because he was remembering both of them. This means Haru has started liking Dano. Hearing this, both become a little awkward. In the next scene, Dano is shown only looking at Haru in the classroom and is very happy. In the next scene, Haru and Dano are in the music classroom with everyone, where due to boredom they think of skipping class. So both ask for permission to go to the nurse's office, and Haru to go with her. Both hold each other's hands and run away from there. On the terrace, Dano says, "This will be our last time skipping class like this." To which Haru says, "If this is the last time, let's go out for a walk." Haru takes her to town, where there is nobody, and they enter a shop where they see some familiar things, such as Haru's sketchbook, Kyung's tennis ball, and the treasure box that both found on a school trip. Seeing this, both understand that this is the place where the writer keeps all the things of the comic world. Then Haru says, "We are here, the writer doesn't know, so we will create our own stage scene now." And both play games to enjoy their time, where both also click selfies for their memories and both set that picture as their phone's lock screen and wish that it doesn't change into a stage scene. While going to school, both return holding each other's hands, where when both are washing their faces, Haru again remembers a flashback from the Chosen era, in which Dano is throwing water on him. And the same thing happens in real life, which brings Haru out of his thoughts. Seeing this, both start laughing, and Haru also throws water on her. But then he feels bad, so he covers Dano's dress with his t-shirt. Then Dano says to make him feel better, "Thank you," which were exactly the same words as Haru's flashback. In the next scene, Jin Miche thinks whether Haru's memory has returned and whether he remembers everything about the flower comic, thinking about which he becomes worried. Jin Miche meets Haru near the red flowers, where Haru asks him about his Joseian-era flashbacks. On this, Jin Miche says, "That's why I was telling you to stay away from storyboard changes, because the answers to your questions don't exist in this world." Then Jin Miche comes from there and thinks about Haru's questions that the Joseian-era flashbacks are past or future. Then he says to himself, because everything is happening the same way here, and if this is not stopped, the bad history will be repeated again. Hearing this, we understand that something very bad must have happened in their past, and Jin Miche is definitely hiding something. Jin Miche sees both of them fighting, where, stopping Haru, Kyung says, "I know you love Dano." The scene shifts back to the tennis court, where Haru kicks a container in his feelings for Dano on tennis, on falling, of which he finds the burnt pages of the flower bouquet. He was able to read them little by little, so he keeps them with him. In the classroom, Dano was only looking at Haru, and Haru was also only looking at her. Then seeing Dano, Baekhyun remembers Du Hwa's words, "Inside the comic, only the main characters get a chance for romance." Baekhyun sees the burnt comic pages in his hands, in which the three main characters look exactly like Haru, Baekhyun, and Dano. Therefore, Kyung goes to Jin Miche and asks the meaning of all this and asks about the relationship of the flower and the secret comic book. Jin Miche only says there is no relationship between them because the flower book is already finished. Kyung questions him, "Then why did you hide that book from everyone?" But Jin Miche does not answer this. In the next scene, we see that Dano teaches Haru English because Haru was a little weak in English. In this scene, we understand the meaning of the name of this drama series, Extraordinary You, because two ordinary extra characters of the comic are changing the story. Therefore, both became Extraordinary You for each other. After this, we see many cute moments of Haru and Dano, where, seeing Haru near her, Dano always starts to panic. Her behavior is also seen by Haru and Dano's friends, and Haru is happy because he finds out why Dano is doing this. Jin Miche tells Dano, "You can like anyone, it's your choice." Hearing this, Dano is shocked and asks Jin Miche about his choice. Jin Miche says, "The writer hasn't included my lover in this comic." On this, Dano says, "That can't be. If the writer has drawn me inside this comic, then he must have drawn my lover too." Then, with the sound of a page turning, Dano reaches her stage scene, where Haru is also with Kyung. In the scene, Baekhyun insults Dano and the children around her scold Baekhyun because he also behaves badly with Dano. After the stage scene ends, Baekhyun comes back, but he sees Dano with Haru, where Dano tells him, "I know you don't mean all these things, but whatever you say on stage, I get very hurt." Then Haru tells Baekhyun, "Stay away from Dano," and both start fighting. In the next scene, we see that in the library, in a dream, Haru sees Dano talking about stars and her wish with a flower ornament. Then he wakes up and remembers Jin Miche's words, "You will not find the answer to your beginning in this world." The next day, Baekhyun apologizes to Dano for his stage words, but he has never apologized to anyone before, so he cannot speak properly. In the next scene, we see that Haru tops the class and the teacher asks him to help Dano with her studies. Then Haru tells Baekhyun, "You lost to an extra character." On the stairs, Dano tells Haru, "My chest pain has increased a lot," to which Haru says, "I will change your role." But Dano gets scared by this. Then Dano's heart monitor watch starts beeping, while she wasn't holding a pen at all. Haru says, "This means the stage scene is about to start," and he tries to change Dano's stage scene. He says, "Maybe Dano will faint and Baekhyun will come to save her." So Haru takes off her watch and puts it on Sae-mi's hand. As soon as the stage change starts, Baekhyun comes there and sees someone fainted, and all the children have surrounded her. At this point, both look into each other's eyes as if they are saying, "Let's see who is the main character." As soon as Baekhyun sees Saimi is there and she gets up and says, Namju is so handsome that I fainted thinking about him. Then, Baekhyung's gaze goes to Haru, who was carrying the unconscious Dano in his arms and taking her to the nurse's room, meaning he had really changed the scene. In the next stage scene, we see Dano with her father in the hospital, where the doctor asks her to be admitted for her full body checkup. Then Dano gets a little worried because she thinks that maybe she will have surgery now. Therefore, the next day, despite it being a weekend, she goes to school to meet Haru, where both have a lot of fun and spend a lot of good time with each other. Then Dano tells him about a tree in her school, saying, this tree will turn 300 years old on October 10th. Both promise to meet each other on that day, but on October 10th, Dano is admitted to the hospital for her body checkup. Haru sits there the whole day waiting for her, but Dano doesn't come. A week passes like this. Then Do-hwa tells Haru about Dano. She is in the hospital. Hearing this, Haru tries to go to her, but he cannot reach. Because every time he is about to reach her, he reaches a new scene. But finally, both somehow meet under the same tree on October 31st, where they become quite emotional because of meeting each other after so much time. Because both were missing each other a lot. Both express their feelings and Dano kisses Haru, but Haru doesn't respond, so Dano backs away. But Haru kisses Dano again. Then Dano says, sorry for the past month and for not being able to keep my promise. Haru refuses to let her apologize, saying, I will always wait for you here. The next day, Do-hwa gives Haru a romantic relationship book. To take this book, Haru asks Dano for permission, but while trying to snatch the book, Dano gets hurt and goes to the nurse's office. Haru also goes there with the book from Do-hwa. Dano meets Baekhyung in the nurse's room, who speaks to her rudely, but in return, Dano explains to him well and leaves. On the other hand, Haru and Dano talk about the stars, because stars don't exist in the secret books world. Then both promise to see the stars together and to change the story. At home, Dano is very happy thinking about many things of Haru, and decides that apart from the stage, she will spend all her time with Haru, after which Haru gets flashbacks of flowers, where he killed someone at Baekhyung's behest, and Baekhyung called him his most loyal companion. Then he had told Haru, find out about Dano and me. Accepting this, Haru started following both and brought all the information to Baekhyung, after which Baekhyung starts trying to impress Dano with different tricks. Now Haru comes out of his flashback and tells Jin Mi-chae all this. Then he again tells him, you cannot change the story, and you will have to stop both of them, because the writer does not want them together. And here, he also gives him a hint. Something very tragic happened in the flower comic and your past life. Next, we see that at school, Haru surprises Dano by showing her stars, which he made by putting dark curtains on the window. Here he again says, I will always be with you, and it feels like they have known each other for a long time. So he says, you found a nameless person like me, where Baekhyung was watching them from outside, and he goes to Jin Mi-chae and asks about the flower book. Will Dano stay with me or with Haru? And who is Haru actually? To which Jin Mi-chae replies, Haru is the one who can change the story. On which Baekhyung says, I can also do that. But Jin Mi-chae grabs his collar in great anger and says, it's all your fault. But he leaves without telling him anything further. Further, we see Baekhyung going to Dano and saying, you will break the engagement in the future. Dano doesn't believe that the writer can write something like this for her. Then she goes and asks Haru about the flower book story, where Haru shows her the flower art and the secret book symbol in the library, saying, this comes in my flashback and maybe that's why I can see those red flowers. Then a flashback of the Joseon era is shown, where Haru and Dano live very happily, but as soon as the stage starts, both of them separate. And here we see that for the first time, Haru feels the scene changing. And in one of these scenes, we can see Dano saying to her father, I don't want to marry Baekhyung. Then Baekhyung says to handle all this, and also sends jewelry for Dano. But here, Dano and Haru talk about their self-awareness to each other for the first time. Now the story comes back to the present, where Haru tells Dano, these red flowers help me remember you. In the next scene, Baekhyung confirms to Haru, Dano is mine. But Haru only says, Dano is just an extra character for you, but for me, she is my beginning. Further, we see that Dano is in the hospital for her set scene, where the doctor asks her to have surgery. There, Dano tells her father, I want to break up with Baekhyung, and leaves from there. Then, as soon as the stage period ends, she meets Baekhyung outside the hospital and asks him, how did you know that I was going to break up our marriage? But Baekhyung doesn't answer this, where Dano says, Haru is more important to me than my fate. In the next scene, the stage scene ends. Dano goes straight to Haru instead of going to Baekhyung, where when Haru comes close to her, her heartbeat starts increasing. So the teacher makes Dano sit down to rest, and they pair Baekhyung and Haru, where they complete the art while fighting with each other. In the next set scene, Dano sees her father at school, where they are fixing the date for her surgery, but Baek-kyung comes there, who assures her dad, "I will take care of Dano." Haru also sees this and remembers the scene of the flower comic, where Baek-kyung says to him, "Keep this pouch, it's my mom's, who is not in this world anymore." This was the same pouch that he had intentionally left near Dano in the market, but even after wanting to, Dano cannot stop herself from acting like his lover, which makes her very sad because she was in the stage period at that time. Now the scene comes to the present, where Dano sees a vision where Baek-kyung is proposing to her in front of the whole school. Seeing this, Dano tells Baek-kyung, "I want to change this." To which Baek-kyung says, "Don't try to do that because you won't be able to change anything." In the end, what the writer wants will happen. After this, Dano plans with Do-hwa and Haru to change the stage, but she sees that everything was happening according to the vision of her story. Even the confession video starts playing. Then Haru tries his best to stop the hall lights, due to which blood also starts coming from his hand, but he somehow turns off the lights and the scene changes. Now instead of Baek-kyung, another boy was proposing to a schoolgirl. Then Jin Mi-chae is not at all happy seeing all this, that these people have changed the stage again. Then a girl passes by him, seeing whom he is completely shocked, because this was the same girl whom Jin Mi-chae loved in the previous comic. Amidst all this, Haru sees a vision where he was holding a sword in his hand and Dano was lying on the blood-soaked ground. Apart from this, many soldiers had surrounded them. Now the scene comes to the present, where Dano is very happy because the stage has changed, but then a very sharp pain starts in her heart and she faints there. After that, her eyes open directly in the nurse's office, where Baek-kyung asks her, "Do you like Haru?" In response, Dano says, "Haru is my beginning, and I like Haru very much." On which Baek-kyung warns her, "No matter how hard you try, in the end, you will have to stay with me, and you will not be able to change the storyboard even if you want to." But Dano leaves from there without saying anything and goes to meet Haru, where she tells him about everything. Then Haru assures her, "I will change the story." Meanwhile, both fall down losing balance, and Dano gets a vision in which she was on the operating table and her condition was very serious. Now, as soon as she comes out of that vision, she gets very scared and hugs Haru tightly because she felt that she was about to die now. Haru also hugs her tightly because he had also seen Dano dying in his vision, but both do not tell each other about their vision. In the next scene, Haru's Joseon-era vision comes, where he and Baek-kyung were playing a game. Whenever Haru was getting weak, Baek-kyung would say to him, "One should always be strong in battle." And in the middle of the conversation, he also says, "If I marry Dano, I can become king, so I will do that." Then hearing this, Haru tells Dano about it and says to her, "Stay away from Baek and don't marry him." To this, Dano replies, "Now I want to change my fate so that I can wait for you and stay away from Baek." Then she reaches another vision where he was leaving Baek-kyung, and Baek-kyung says to him, "If there is no answer to your beginning here, then you can create that answer yourself." Hearing this, Baek-kyung says, "I know you like Dano." Then he reaches the next vision, where Dano was lying on the ground injured. Seeing this, Haru comes back to his present and goes to meet Jin Mi-chae, where he asks him, "Will the secret book also have the same ending as the flower book?" Jin Mi-chae says, "I will not be able to save you and Dano because I knew a girl who lost everything trying to change the story." Then we see a flashback in which Jin Mi-chae was running away with the girl he loved, leaving his kingdom. Her name was So-young, but in the forest, soldiers kill So-young in front of Jin Mi-chae's eyes. Now the scene comes to the present, where Jin Mi-chae tells Haru, "No matter how hard you try, you cannot change anyone's fate, and if you try, you will bring trouble for everyone." The next scene shows the school, where Dano goes to Jin Mi-chae and says, "I want to talk about my feelings for Haru," and also tells Baek-kyung, "Don't tell Haru about my surgery." After this, there is a stage scene of Haru and Baek-kyung, where Baek-kyung confesses his feelings for Dano to Haru. As soon as the stage ends, both separate, as if they are waiting for someone. In the next scene, Baek-kyung does not leave Dano's hand even after the stage ends. Then Haru gets very angry seeing this and pulls Dano towards himself. On this, Baek-kyung tells him, "How can you change the story until you don't even know what is going to happen next?" In the next scene, we see that Baek-kyung breaks his promise and tells Haru, Dano is going to have surgery, for which he blames Haru. Then the scene shifts to Dano's house, where Baek-kyung was waiting for her. He tells her, "I will change your fate, and then you will stay with me, whether it is real or fake." Further, we see Haru asking Dano about her surgery, to which she laughs and denies. But after hearing Baek-kyung and Jin Mi-chae's warnings that he cannot change both their fates, Haru becomes a very overprotective boyfriend and starts protecting her from every little thing, like drawing pencils, water, and even keeps her away from Do-hwa. This looks very funny. Then we see that Dano plans to go home with Haru, but due to an unexpected stage, she reaches with Baekhyun, where he covers her with his coat. Then Dano confirms with him, "Do you really like me?" To which he says, "I hate your illness, not you, and also your father, who is using me for his business." As soon as the stage ends, Dano starts leaving after seeing Baekhyun's coat, but Baekhyun covers her again with his coat and says, "I really care about you. Maybe the writer is understanding my feelings better." But after everything is over, Dano goes to Haru, where he asks her about her health and sadly says, "I will change the story, because I saw you dying in the flower comic, but I will not let it repeat in the secret comic." Now here Dano tries to comfort him, but he starts crying himself, so Haru hugs her and says, "I will definitely change the story and save you." Then both go to the garden where Dano tells Haru, "Don't listen to Jin Miche." After this, Dano goes home where she says, "I have to change the story because I want to live." Haru is also listening to her there. The next day, Do-hwa tells Haru about Dano's surgery date, and Haru asks for his help in changing the story. Meanwhile, Baekhyun goes to the library and searches for the secret book, but he doesn't find it there. Meanwhile, due to a power outage, he reaches Haru's sketching corner, where he is shown the time of the Joseon era inside that black hole. There, he tells Haru, "I know you like Dano. Now explain everything to me." To which Haru only says, "Let Dano live peacefully." Then the scene changes and we see Dano dying. A red flower comes out of that black hole and falls, and Baekhyun is completely shocked seeing all this. Then the scene shifts to Haru and Do-hwa, where both were trying to change the stage in the hospital. But whenever Haru changes the surgery date, it becomes the same again. After trying many times, Haru finally exchanges Dano's reports with someone else, who is none other than Ju-da's grandmother. Then the doctor, seeing the reports, says, "Dano doesn't need surgery because according to the reports, she is recovering." Where Baekhyun tells her, "You shouldn't trust Haru and should have the surgery," but she doesn't agree. Then he gives her the pages of the flower book, which showed that Dano died because of Haru. Seeing this, she is shocked because she understands that the story of the flower book is repeating inside the secret book. On the other hand, in the secret book, Haru is very happy seeing the scene of Dano's surgery changing. Then Jin Miche reads the book and says, "Finally, Haru changed the scene, as I said." Then Jin Miche meets Baekhyun in the library, where he tells him, "If anyone dies in the shadow period, they will come back. But all the memories after becoming self-aware will be gone, and he will become unaware again. But if someone dies in the stage period, their death will be real, and they will disappear from this world forever." Then he shows him the flower book and says, "This book is predicting your future. I hope you will save Dano." Baekhyun also tells Dano about the flower book and tells Haru, "You were the reason for Dano's death in the flower book." After this, Dano comes and meets Haru and tells him, "Do-hwa told me that you changed the stage." Both decide that they will keep changing the story until the end. But Haru gets a little worried that Baekhyun's words might come true. Then, Dano returns the pages of the flower book to Kyung and says, "Don't tell Haru that I know about the flower book." In the middle of their conversation, both of them reach a new stage scene, where Haru is also with Baekhyun. Baekhyun proposes to both with his mother's ring, which Dano accepts, but she thinks to herself, "The writer is very bad. Because of him, Haru has to see all this." As soon as the stage ends, Dano returns the ring to Baekhyun because it was very important to him. In the next scene, Dano is worried about her heart pain and tells Haru, "I am fine in the stage period, but my health gets very bad in the shadow period." In the next stage scene, we get to see both of them in the nurse's office, but the stage ends immediately, and both start leaving from there. Then Kyung stops her and goes to get her bag from the classroom. Then Haru comes to her and tries to remind her of old things, but she doesn't remember anything. At that time, Dano starts having pain in her hand again, so she tells Haru, "Get the medicines from my bag." But by then, Baekhyun has already brought the medicines. In the next stage scene, we see that Dano is going home with Baekhyun. As soon as the stage scene ends, Dano thinks of going back to Haru, but Baekhyun asks her to stay with him. The next morning, seeing Dano, Haru gets some flashbacks, where in the Joseon era, Dano is being told, "Baekhyun is going to kill your father, but I will save you." In the next scene, Dano is brought in front of Baekhyun, where Haru comes to save her, but at Baekhyun's behest, he has to kill Dano. Because it was the stage period, he cannot stop himself. But after trying a lot, he stops the sword from his hand and takes that sword out of Dano's stomach. But Dano dies there. Seeing this flashback, Haru gets very scared and starts staying away from Dano. He He thinks that he will be the reason for Dano's death and he will not be able to stop this thing. Haru learns from Do-hwa that Dano's health is very bad and she is admitted to the hospital. Hearing this, both become very worried because there was no scene on stage that could tell what could happen to Dano. It is possible that Dano and Haru may die in the shadow period itself. Meanwhile, Kyung is also in the hospital, who was really very worried and crying. He thinks, if I remove Dano and Haru's oxygen mask, then both of them will forget everything in the shadow period. But he remembers a flashback, which reveals that in the flower book, Dano was not killed by Haru, but by himself. He had intentionally pushed Haru's sword, due to which Dano was injured. Remembering this, he feels very guilty. Therefore, he puts the oxygen mask back on and leaves from there. After that, Haru arrives, who, seeing Dano asleep, says, as soon as the stage starts, she will be completely fine. Therefore, he requests the writer, keep Dano and me alive until the stage starts. But then, Dano dies. As soon as the stage scene changes, Haru sees Dano and calls her by name. But Dano, looking at him, leaves from there. Haru grabs her hand, but Dano very rudely pulls her hand away and goes back. Here, Haru's worst nightmare comes true, because Dano has now lost her self-awareness. A scene of Dano and Baek-kyung is shown where Dano is very excited about her wedding. Seeing this, Baek-kyung is very happy. But as soon as the stage ends, he realizes that Dano is no longer self-aware. Then Haru tries to talk to her, but Dano gets scared of him. For her, Haru was just a friend of Baek-kyung. Haru sadly meets Jin Mi-chae and tells him everything. On this, Jin Mi-chae says, I thought you would have fixed everything by changing the story of the flower book, but this change has become a nightmare for everyone. And he warns Haru, as the story is reaching its final stage, the writer is going to remove the extra characters. Therefore, stop acting on your own, because trying to change the writer's story will cause you to be erased from this world forever. In the next scene, Haru is in the library, where he again has a flashback in which he sees that it was not him, but Baek-kyung who killed Dano. And after Dano's death, he promised himself, I will always remember you. In the present too, he promises Dano, I will always remember you. Then Haru confirms with Baek-kyung, did you kill Dano in the flower book? After this, we see that Haru does all the same things with Dano that Dano used to do with him when she was not self-aware. Like, whenever he meets her, he introduces himself and then talks about changing things. Meanwhile, Do-hwa also finds out that Dano is not self-aware and feels very bad for Haru. So, Young talks to Dano. The tree under which we are standing has seen many children for 300 years. If you cannot differentiate yourself from them, then you will be lost among them. From this, we understand that So Young is also self-aware. On the other hand, Dano spends a lot of time with Haru, and she is also very happy. When she's going home, she thanks Baek-kyung. Thank you for giving such good moments. But there, by mistake, she takes Haru's name instead of Baek-kyung's, which she doesn't realize, but Baek-kyung gets a little upset after hearing it. The next day at school, the children realize that one of their classmates is not in school, and they also realize that they don't even remember his phone number nor his name. Seeing this, Haru realizes the story is about to end now, and the extra characters have already started disappearing. Further, Dano goes to Baek-kyung and returns his ring, saying, you should find your real side, just like I found mine. She forgives him for the flower book incident, because it was all written by the writer. In the next scene, we see that Haru notices that his name is missing from his name tag, but he hides this from Dano. Then going to the art room, Dano thanks him, thank you for fulfilling my wish about the stars, and tells him, this is my favorite room. Then, as they come out of the art room, they hear a very strange noise. As soon as Haru opens the door of that room and looks, the room is completely destroyed. Seeing this, Haru gets very scared because now he is confirmed that all the things that the writer no longer needs are disappearing from the story. Now, so that Dano doesn't find out about this, Haru takes her from there and flirts with her on the ground to distract her. Here, both of them decide that they will complete their remaining bucket list, in which Haru is most happy seeing the wish, 100 kisses. Then Haru tries to fulfill her small wishes, and both go to the library and kiss and spend good time. In the next scene, Baek-kyung is in the kitchen where Dano also joins him. She takes out his doll from the school model and writes his name on it and gives it to him and says, you are the real Baek-kyung. Then Baek-kyung emotionally thanks Dano. Thank you for making me a good person. Meanwhile, Dano is placing a watch as a gift in Haru's locker. But as soon as she opens his locker, she feels a little strange because Haru's name tag was not there. Then Dano meets Haru on the ground, where she finally confesses, I love you. But Haru suddenly disappears. Both reach the classroom for their stage scene, where seeing Haru, Dano feels a little relieved. But as soon as the stage ends, Haru disappears again and reaches the library. Dano also goes to the library to find him, but as soon as she starts to understand what is happening, everything starts disappearing. Haru runs away from there with Dano. Dano reaches the hall and all the things behind them start disappearing in the darkness. Haru, looking at Dano, says, "Dano, you are my beginning and my end." He is very happy because in this life he met Dano and made many memories with her, but no one can stop this end. Then he says, "In the flower book, I couldn't protect you, but this time, I have saved you." Haru asks Dano to say his name. Both cry, say his name, and hug each other tightly. Then the darkness engulfs both of them. When everything returns to normal, Haru has disappeared from there. This is a very emotional scene. Dano, despite knowing everything, starts searching for Haru and cries a lot. Now the time after 1 year is shown. Everyone is graduating. Then we see that Baekhyun tries to make Dano happy. Everyone takes group photos together. Then Dano hears Haru's voice. Dano goes to Haru's locker, where she sees his watch with his name written on it, which was still there. Then Baekhyun comes to her and says, "Sorry and thank you," because he feels that this is his last chance to say everything. Baekhyun places his tennis ball on top of his diploma and starts looking around, as if something is about to happen. On the other hand, Dano keeps the diploma and watch on Haru's seat and writes, "You completed your graduation at the age of 19, so congratulations from Dano." After that, Dano goes to the 300-year-old tree, where she finds a diary, which was Haru's. Its title was Dano's Haru. Inside the diary, Haru had drawn all the good moments spent with both of them. On the last page it was written, "Haru wishes that this will be Dano's best gift." Seeing this, Dano starts crying. She thanks Haru for coming into her life, but then she hears the sound of turning pages, and with this, the story of this book ends here. Then we are shown a new story, in which the scene shifts to the university. Now Dano has grown up a little, her hair has also grown long. In the next scene, we see a boy in the library opposite Dano, who looks quite familiar, but his face is not shown to us. Then in the garden, both hear the girls talking, who are saying, "On October 10th, the old tree in the garden will turn 300 years old." Hearing this, Dano feels something strange. After that, a painting is shown in the exhibition, which looked like her and Haru's sketches. But even seeing it, Dano doesn't remember anything. Still, she takes that painting to the same tree and sits there for a long time. When she is about to leave, she hears a voice, which she had said to Haru in the secret book. "Wherever we are, this tree will bring us together, and we will stay together for a long time." Then another voice comes in which Haru had said, "Even when both of us are 19 or 20 years old, I will still be with you." Then Haru comes out from behind the tree. Dano sees him and says, "I found you," but Haru doesn't respond. Both start leaving from there disappointed. But then Haru comes from behind and hugs Dano. He whispers in her ear, "I missed you so much." Then both start crying, and here the drama ends.